A man's journey. As it turned out, my dad and I were both going to Philadelphia with Jeffrey. My mom couldn't take care of me at home and be violently sick at the same time. My grandparents were away, so the Rents couldn't dump me with them. Of course, Jeffrey was thrilled. Wow, Stephen, we're going on a men's journey tomorrow. You, me, and Daddy. This is going to be great. Wait till my Metro drip starts. We'll watch Shrek and Peter Pan in a row if we want. And then we'll say my stomach hurts and we'll both get Jello. And you can ride a real wheelchair. And then you can come to play therapy with me. And if you want, you can go to the cafeteria during the Vista screen push if the throwing up will bother you. I'll try to be brave though, I promise. Do you think we can play cards while we wait for the EMLA to work? I love Go Fish. That's what Mommy usually plays with me. Do you know how to play it? Meanwhile, my mom was upstairs taking a break from hurling so she could brief my dad. Okay, honey, make sure they give you the EMLA cream as soon as you get there. Remember, it takes an hour to numb his skin completely. If you have to get it there right away. Jeffrey likes it if you spread it over his port yourself. But don't forget to warm it up between your hands first so it won't be cold in the skin. Then they'll flush the port and do blood work. Jeffrey doesn't mind seeing his blood drawn, but you might want to send Stephen on an errand so he won't have to look at it. He hated watching them access Jeffrey's port at the emergency room that time. Oh, what's next? The oncologist will probably come in to ask you some questions before we start. The methotrexate. I'll write down a note tonight, but you can basically tell him that Jeffrey hasn't been vomiting as much. His CNA seems fine. He'll know what that means. Oh, I forgot. If it's Dr. Arena, hold Jeffrey's hand. Jeffrey's afraid of him. If it's Dr. Moses, you're okay. He's Jeffrey's favorite. Speaking of favorites, Jeffrey loves the snow cones from the third floor fridge, the third floor lounge. He swears it tastes better than the ones on his floor. After a head-swimming 20 minutes of this, my mom had to run to the bathroom, but you could faintly hear her. And tell Dr. Moses to call Dr. Perot as soon as the CBCs come down. Dr. Perot has a question about the Lacorvid dosage. Then she had to stop giving orders for a while as her sickness overcame her. It was going to be a long few days for all of us. Hours later, I was lying in my bed. I realized that my dad still hadn't given the final ruling on the benefit concert. Then I was starting to think about the bills and about what I would see the next day at the hospital and about the schoolwork. I would miss my being absent. Needless to say, Then I started wondering about the bills and what about I would be seeing the next day at the hospital and about the schoolwork I would miss being absent. Needless to say, it took hours to fall asleep. When I did, I had the dream. As usual, I woke up screaming, but this was worse than usual. Because my mom was sick, she didn't come rushing in. And by the time my dad got there, I had woken myself up, sat bolt upright, smashed my head into the nightstand somehow, and bit through the inside of my left cheek. I looked at the alarm clock, which was now blinking upside down on the floor. 229, 229, 229. As my father patted me awkwardly on my sweat-drenched back, as my breath slowed down to near normal, I thought, well, I might be gushing blood, but at least I can get a few more hours of sleep. Then my dad leaned over, flipped the clock, and put it back on the table. And I realized it was really 6:22. Not only was it too late to get more sleep, but it was too late, period. The day had started with a bang and a whimper. Before I knew it, my father, Jeffrey, and I were bundling into the car, along with my school books for studying, my sticks and practice pad, and extra clothes for all of us. Naturally, in a rush, we had forgotten something major, but we didn't know it yet. Dad was just trying to handle the pages and pages of notes my mom had heroically composed in the midst of her own bout of illness. Jeffrey was working on balancing a cup of juice and his Go-Gurt while eating his breakfast in his booster seat. And I was sucking on an ice cube in a sad attempt to stop the bleeding from my gouged cheek. I hope that none of the neighbors were watching this scene, and obviously sick lady swaying on the lawn in her old bathrobe, waving goodbye to the unshaven guy in the misbuttoned dress shirt who was driving two bald kids, one of them intermittently spitting blood out of the passenger side window. Other than our chaos, it was so quiet on our block you could almost hear the tick, tick, tick of the property value dropping as passerbys took the tableau of horror. When we were about a mile from home, my dad noticed the fuel light on the dashboard was blinking, so we stopped to get gas. I pumped while my father ran into the station to get a cup of coffee so he could spill it on himself, pipe pulling out of the lot. Then, just as we started down the ramp for the highway, Jeffrey shouted, "I forgot Matt Medic! I forgot Matt Medic!" Sorry, Jeff, we don't have time to turn around. We don't have time to turn us around. As it is, we're going to barely have time to spread that Okla cream on your port in time. It's EMLA, Dad, but I need Matt Medic. He helps me from the bad blast from the coming back. I need him. Not today, Jeffrey. But Dad, the car lurched and veered into a driving lane, what might be optimistically referred to as a close merge, as my dad replied through these famous clenched teeth, "But don't but dad me right now, okay? I'm trying to drive in traffic. We're late. We're about 3 hours of sleep. I haven't shaved, and no idea what I'm doing. And I'm sitting in a puddle of boiling hot coffee." A year ago, Jeffrey would have been good for about half an hour of whining, but now he just sat back with a sigh and sipped his juice. After a while, he assigned me a job for the duration. "Stephen, it looks like Matt Medic is out of action. You have a new mission." I slurred back while desperately trying to avoid having my teeth touch the gaping hole in my cheek. "What is it, buddy? Keep me brave, please. Just keep me brave." Then he finished a little meal and fell asleep. Just like that. I stared out the window and wondered why Jeffrey thought I, of all people, was somehow qualified to keep him brave. You think his first choice might be somebody who didn't wake up crying in a pool of sweat every other day, or perhaps someone who could sleep through the night in a soft bed without injuring himself. On the other hand, I suppose his first choice was actually an inanimate injection molded plastic figurine. And as a second choice, I guess I would have to do. As we approached the hospital, we drove through the campus of the University of Philadelphia. It was beautiful. Spring was just getting in gear, and there were happy college students walking everywhere in jeans and t-shirt, sweaters, and shorts, mini skirts. Despite the early hour, I even saw a group of guys playing frisbee, and I thought how weird it was for Jeffrey to be driving past all these carefree people who had it made on his way to fight for his 27th installment of life and death battle against cancer. Good thing I was around to cheer my brother up with my positive outlook, huh? We parked, and Jeffrey guided my father through the check-in procedure. Then he led us upstairs to the floor. I paused for a minute in front of a set of double doors. I had imagined and feared the sights beyond them for months on end, but now it was a time to face them. We pushed through and stepped into Belleville, USA. There were sick kids everywhere, walking with IV poles, playing games, lying in beds, watching TV, sleeping. I had known I'd see lots of hairless little Jeffreys there, but there were kids of all ages. Some were older than me, some were probably in grade school, and a few were infants, which made me catch my breath. Some seemed healthier than Jeffrey, and others were in such bad shape that they had to be pushed around in wheelchairs. There were lots of family members too, but my eyes kept being drawn back to the patients. I was especially shaken by the sight of a girl who was probably my age. She was leaning against a wall in a room, talking on a cell phone, even though you weren't supposed to use cell phones in the hospital. Her hair was almost gone, and her body was just a wisp. But you could tell that she had been gorgeous before the cancer. I hoped she'd be gorgeous again. She looked over at me with these pale blue eyes you could tell had a lot going on behind them. I looked away and hurried to catch up with Jeffrey. While my father and Jeffrey were getting set up in the room, I kind of hovered near the door. A friendly-looking youngish lady came up to me. Her name tag said, Andrea McDermott, Child Life Specialist. She started right into a conversation. A little overwhelming, isn't it? I'm Andy. You must be Jeffrey's brother, Stephen. He talks about you all the time. He's a brave little guy. You know him? Yes, I check in on him every week. Sometimes I get him into an art class or a story time or a game hour. Other times we just talk and play cards. Go fish, right? Yup. I guess he enlists you to play too. Listen, you probably have about half an hour before Jeffrey is ready for his treatment. Would you like to visit the chapel? Why? Well, your mother spends a lot of time there whenever Jeffrey is asleep or occupied, so I thought you might want to also. Mom prays for Jeffrey? Of course, Mom would pray for Jeffrey, but somehow it hadn't occurred to me that she had this whole routine for it. No thanks. I think I'll stick around in case my brother needs me. Okay, I'm glad to help. I'm glad to finally meet you. Jeffrey thinks the world of you, and I can see why.